My grandson asked me to lend him $50,000 for business. I gave it. A month later, I saw him in a new Porsche. He said the business didn't work out. I smiled and patted him on the shoulder. And the next day, my lawyer served him with a court summons. I'm glad you're here with me. Please listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I had worked 42 years as an electrical engineer before retiring to my modest 3-bedroom house in suburban Pennsylvania. My wife Margaret passed away 6 years ago, leaving me with memories, a paid-off mortgage, and a comfortable pension that allowed me to live without financial worry. I spent my days tending to my garden, playing chess at the community center, and watching my grandchildren grow into adults. Life was simple, predictable, and exactly what I wanted after decades of deadlines and stress. My grandson, Derek, was always my favorite, though I would never admit it to the others. He was 28 years old, charming, ambitious, and reminded me of myself at that age, full of dreams and energy. Unlike his two sisters who had steady corporate jobs, Derek always talked about entrepreneurship, about building something of his own. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, he would corner me with another business idea: a food truck, a tech startup, an online marketing agency. I listened patiently, offered advice when asked, and privately hoped he would find his path. Then came that Tuesday afternoon in March, when Derek showed up at my door unannounced. He looked different, nervous, eager, with that intensity in his eyes that young men get when they think they've found their big break. Could we talk? Of course, I said, leading him to my living room where sunlight streamed through the windows Margaret had loved so much. "Grandpa," he began, sitting forward on the couch, hands clasped together. I found it, the opportunity I've been waiting for. I set down my coffee and listened. He explained that a former college roommate had started a property flipping business in Philadelphia and needed a partner. The numbers were incredible, he said. They could turn a 15% profit in 90 days. But his friend needed capital fast to secure 3 properties before they went to auction. The total investment required was $50,000. "I have 30 saved up," Derek said, meeting my eyes. "I need 20 more, Grandpa. I'll pay you back in 4 months with interest, 10%. Something flickered in my chest. Call it intuition, call it the wisdom of age. But I looked at my grandson, at his hopeful face, and thought about Margaret. She always believed in giving family chances. How could I live with myself if I didn't help him when I had the means? 50,000, I said slowly. "I'll give you the full 50. Keep your 30 as a safety net." His eyes widened. "Grandpa, I can't." "You can and you will. But Derek..." I paused, making sure he understood. "This is a loan. We'll draw up papers. You'll pay me back in 6 months. Fair?" He hugged me, thanked me profusely, and 2 days later my attorney drafted a simple promissory note. Derek signed it without hesitation. I transferred $50,000 from my savings account, money I had carefully accumulated over decades, into his checking account. He promised to keep me updated on the business progress. The first week he called twice, full of excitement about property inspections and renovation plans. The second week, 1 call. The third week, silence. I told myself he was busy, that successful ventures required total focus. But doubt began creeping into my mind during my sleepless nights. Had I been a fool? 4 weeks after the transfer, I drove to the grocery store on a Saturday morning. The parking lot was crowded, and I was searching for a spot when I saw it. A gleaming silver Porsche 911, so new that temporary plates were still taped in the rear window. And standing beside it, phone pressed to his ear, laughing at something, was Derek. I sat in my Camry, engine idling, and watched my grandson run his hand along the hood of that car. A car that probably cost exactly $50,000. Maybe more. He didn't see me. I waited until he drove away. that Porsche engine purring like a satisfied cat before I found a parking spot. My hands were shaking. I didn't go into the store. I drove home, walked straight to my study, and pulled out the promissory note Derek had signed. Then I picked up the phone and called my attorney. "Bill," I said when he answered, "remember that loan agreement we drafted for my grandson? I need you to do something for me. What would you do when trust collides with betrayal? When blood proves thinner than greed?" I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching shadows from the streetlight dance across the plaster, and did the mathematics of disappointment. $50,000. That was 2 years of my pension. That was the money I had set aside for home repairs, for medical emergencies, for the comfortable cushion that lets an old man sleep peacefully. Gone. Converted into German engineering and leather seats. But the money wasn't what kept me awake. I had lost something far more valuable. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with coffee and a yellow legal pad, just like I used to do when solving complex problems at work. I drew a line down the center of the page. On the left side, I wrote what I know. On the right, what I need. What I knew. Derek took $50,000 under false pretenses. He bought a Porsche instead of investing in any business. He had been avoiding my calls. He had lied to my face. What I needed: documentation, evidence, a clear legal strategy. My attorney, Bill Harrison, had been my friend for 20 years. When I called him Saturday afternoon, I didn't have to explain much. "The kid bought a Porsche, didn't he?" Bill said, with the weary tone of someone who had seen this story 1,000 times. "How did you know?" "Frank, in my 40 years practicing law, I've learned that when a young person suddenly gets money and goes silent, they've done one of 3 things: gambled it away, spent it on a car, or given it to a girlfriend. The Porsche is almost predictable." We met at his office Monday morning. Bill's practice operated from a converted Victorian house downtown, all dark wood and leather chairs that smelled like old books. He poured us both coffee and reviewed the promissory note. "This is solid," he said, tapping the paper. "Clear terms, signed, witnessed. He owes you $50,000 plus the agreed interest. He's already in default since he hasn't made any payments." "What are my options?" Bill leaned back in his chair. "Legally, you have several. You could demand immediate payment, threaten a lawsuit to scare him into compliance, or actually file suit. Given that he's family, most grandparents would try the first 2 options." "And if I'm not most grandparents?" He studied me over his reading glasses. "Then we draft a demand letter today, give him 10 days to respond, and if he doesn't pay, we file a civil suit for breach of contract and fraud. We'll request full repayment, interest, legal fees, and court costs." "Fraud?" "He obtained money based on false pretenses. That's fraud, Frank. We can prove he never intended to use it for business purposes. The Porsche purchase timeline proves it." I thought about Derek as a little boy, how he used to help me in the garden, how he would ask endless questions about how things worked. Where had that curious child gone? When had he learned to lie so smoothly? "Do it," I said. "All of it." Bill nodded slowly. "You understand this will destroy your relationship with him? Probably with his parents, too." "Bill, he destroyed the relationship when he lied to me. I'm just making it official." We spent the next hour planning the strategy. Bill would send a formal demand letter via certified mail, requiring Derek to repay the full $50,000 plus 10% interest within 10 business days. The letter would cite the promissory note and warn of legal action if payment wasn't received. "Meanwhile," Bill said, "start documenting everything. Every call you made to him, every promise he made. Save text messages, emails, anything that shows his original claims about the business." "What about the Porsche?" "Get photos if you can. Get the VIN if possible. We'll need to prove the purchase date and amount. I'll hire a private investigator to document the vehicle and trace the payment." As I left Bill's office that afternoon, spring sunlight warming the streets, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. For the first time since seeing that silver Porsche, I wasn't paralyzed by shock or drowning in disappointment. I had a plan. I had steps to take. I drove past the community center where Derek and I used to play chess, past the ice cream shop where I had bought him cones every summer of his childhood, past the park where I taught him to throw a baseball. How many memories would this lawsuit erase? All of them, probably. But some principles matter more than memories. Some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. The certified letter arrived at Derek's apartment on a Wednesday morning. I know because the tracking system confirmed delivery at 10:47 a.m., signature required. I sat at my computer refreshing the Postal Service website, like a man half my age checking social media, watching that little status icon change from out for delivery to delivered. Now we wait, Bill had said. The clock starts ticking. For 3 days. Nothing. No call, no text, no angry knock on my door. I went about my normal routine, watering the tomato plants Margaret had loved, playing chess with Ed and Morris at the center, preparing my simple dinners. But every time my phone rang, my heart rate spiked. On day 4, Derek's mother called. My daughter Linda. Dad? Her voice was tight, strained. What the hell is going on? I had been expecting this. Linda had always protected Derek, made excuses for him, smoothed over his mistakes since he was a teenager. What did Derek tell you? He said you're suing him over some misunderstanding about a loan. Dad, he's your grandson. You can't. Linda. I kept my voice calm, firm. Did he mention the Porsche? More silence. I could hear her breathing, processing. There must be some explanation. I'm sure there is. And he can provide it in court if he doesn't repay the loan as agreed. Dad, please. He's family. Can't you just talk to him? I tried talking. He stopped answering my calls. I paused, softening my tone slightly. Linda, I love you. I love Derek. But love doesn't mean enabling theft. Theft? What would you? She hung up. I sat there holding my phone, feeling the weight of what I had set in motion. This wasn't just about Derek anymore. This was fracturing my entire family. 2 days later, Bill called with news. The investigator got everything. Photos, VIN, purchase records. Your grandson bought that Porsche from a dealership in King of Prussia for $48,500. Paid cash. The purchase date was March 18th, 3 days after you transferred the money. 3 days. He had waited 72 hours before betraying me. There's more. Bill continued. The investigator talked to the salesman very casually. Derek apparently told him he'd come into some money and wanted to celebrate. Those were his exact words. I closed my eyes. Evidence. Cold, hard, undeniable evidence. Frank, you still there? I'm here. That's everything we need, isn't it? It's enough to prove fraud. We have timeline, motive, and his own admission that he spent the money on personal luxury immediately after receiving it. No reasonable person would believe he intended to use it for business. That evening, Derek finally called. Not from his cell phone, from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, his voice was different. No charm, no warmth, just barely controlled anger. Grandpa, we need to talk. I'm listening. This lawsuit thing is insane. You're really going to drag me to court over a family loan? It stopped being a family loan when you lied to me, Derek. I didn't lie. The business deal fell through. That happens in entrepreneurship. I was going to pay you back. With what money? The Porsche? Silence. Then, you've been spying on me? I saw you. By accident. In the grocery store parking lot 4 weeks ago. I kept my voice level, devoid of emotion. Nice car. German engineering. Probably cost exactly what I gave you. That's different. I can explain. Then explain it to the judge. You have 6 days left to repay the loan per the demand letter. After that, we file suit. You're really doing this? You're going to humiliate me in court? No, Derek. You humiliated yourself. I'm just holding you accountable. This is bullshit. You're choosing money over family. You chose a Porsche over integrity. Don't project your failures onto me. He hung up. I sat in my quiet living room, in the chair where Margaret used to read her mystery novels, and felt the loneliness of being right, of having proof, of knowing that sometimes love means letting people face the consequences of their choices. The point of no return had passed. Now we would see if Derek had any honor left, or if that too had been traded for leather seats and a turbo engine. The 10-day deadline passed with no payment, no apology, no contact. On day 11, Bill filed the civil complaint in county court. The lawsuit was public record now, available for anyone to search. Frank Morrison versus Derek Morrison. Grandfather versus grandson. The end of pretending this was a private family matter. Bill had been thorough. The complaint detailed every element: the promissory note, the false pretenses, the Porsche purchase, Derek's admission to the car salesman, the timeline proving premeditation. We weren't just asking for $50,000 back. We were asking for the full amount plus interest, plus legal fees, plus punitive damages for fraud. Punitive damages? I had asked when reviewing the documents. It sends a message, Bill explained, that this behavior has consequences beyond just paying back what you took. It's punishment, Frank. It's deterrence. Derek was served with the lawsuit at his apartment that Friday evening. Again, I tracked it obsessively. Sheriff's Department delivery confirmation arriving at 6:23 p.m. He would open his door to find an officer handing him papers that accused him of fraud. In legal language, before witnesses, in permanent public record. The weekend was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of stillness that precedes a storm. Monday morning, I was in my garden, tying up tomato plants that had grown unruly, when 3 cars pulled into my driveway. Linda and her husband, Tom. Derek's father, Michael, my son, and his wife, Patricia. And Derek himself, emerging from his Porsche, dressed in a suit like he was heading to a business meeting. They walked toward me as a unified front. An intervention, a show of force. Dad, we need to talk. Michael said. His voice carried that authoritative tone he used in his corporate job, the voice of someone accustomed to people obeying. This has gone too far. I set down my gardening shears and faced them. 6 against 1. I'm listening. Linda stepped forward, eyes red like she'd been crying. Please drop the lawsuit. We'll work something out. Derek will pay you back. We'll set up a payment plan. He had a payment plan. It was called the promissory note he signed. Dad, you're destroying this family! Michael's face was flushed, angry. Over what? Pride? Stubbornness? Over $50,000 and a lie? Derek spoke for the first time, his voice cold. I told you the business deal fell through. I made a mistake with the car, okay? I admit that. But suing me, making this public, you're trying to ruin my life. You're ruining your own life. I'm just refusing to enable it. Patricia, usually quiet, found her voice. Frank, please, think about what you're doing. If this goes to court, everyone will know. Derek's employers, his friends, future business partners. You'll destroy his reputation. Actions have consequences, Patricia. He's 28 years old. Linda's voice broke. He made a stupid mistake. Haven't you ever made mistakes? Not ones that involved stealing from family. Stealing? Derek's face darkened. You gave me that money willingly. You can't just... I gave it for a specific purpose under specific terms. You violated those terms. That's fraud, Derek. That's theft by deception. Michael moved closer, lowering his voice to what I'm sure he thought was reasonable persuasion. Dad, let me be direct. If you continue this lawsuit, you're choosing to have no relationship with your son, your daughter, your grandchildren. Is that what you want? To die alone because you couldn't forgive a mistake? The manipulation was so transparent it was almost funny. Almost. Michael, I'm 70 years old. I've lived through wars, recessions, and the death of my wife. I'm not afraid of being alone, and I'm certainly not afraid of standing up for what's right. They stayed for another 30 minutes, alternating between pleading and threatening, between tears and anger. Linda promised Derek would pay everything back. Just drop the lawsuit first. Michael suggested I was being manipulated by Bill, that lawyers always escalate things for profit. Derek himself offered a payment plan, $500 a month, though by his math that would take 9 years. 9 years, I repeated. I'd be 79 years old if I lived that long. Exactly, Grandpa. You're not getting any younger. Is this how you want to spend your final years, fighting with family? I looked at each of them, at my children who had raised a thief, at my grandson who felt no genuine remorse, at the in-laws who enabled it all. Get off my property. They left, one by one, doors slamming, tires squealing. Derek's Porsche was the last to pull away, its engine roaring like an insult. For 3 days after their confrontation, my phone didn't stop ringing, but I stopped answering. Linda called 17 times. Michael left 8 voicemails, each one oscillating between anger and false sweetness. Text messages accumulated on my phone like digital warfare. Dad, please call me back. You're making a huge mistake. Think about Mom. What would she want? That last one, invoking Margaret, made my hands shake with rage. They knew nothing about what she would want. Margaret, who had volunteered at the church food bank for 20 years. Margaret, who believed in helping people who helped themselves, not enabling people who helped themselves to other people's money. On the 4th day, a FedEx envelope arrived. Inside was a handwritten letter from Derek on expensive stationery, probably purchased with my money. The letter was a masterpiece of manipulation. Dear Grandpa, it began. I've been doing a lot of thinking and praying about our situation. Praying. Derek hadn't been to church since his confirmation at age 13. The letter continued with apologies that felt rehearsed, promises that felt empty, and a final offer. He would pay me back $25,000 immediately if I dropped the lawsuit. Half. He was offering half of what he owed, like we were negotiating a business deal. Think of this as a fresh start for both of us, he wrote. We can put this ugliness behind us and rebuild our relationship. Isn't family worth more than money? I read the letter 3 times, searching for genuine remorse. I found only strategy. I sat down and wrote my response by hand. Just 2 lines. Derek, I will accept one form of payment, $50,000 plus interest, as agreed in the contract you signed. Anything else is not a negotiation. It's an insult. I didn't mail it. I took a photo and texted it to him. No room for misinterpretation. His response came within minutes. You'll regret this. The mask was slipping. Good. That afternoon, I went to the community center for my weekly chess game with Ed Patterson. Ed was 74, a retired accountant who had been widowed around the same time I lost Margaret. We had been playing chess together for 5 years, and somewhere along the way, we had become genuine friends. You look like hell, Frank, he said as we set up the board. I told him everything. The whole story spilled out between moves, the loan, the Porsche, the lawsuit, the family confrontation. Ed listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding, his experienced eyes processing not just my words, but the weight behind them. When I finished, he moved his knight and said, You're doing the right thing. My whole family thinks I'm wrong. Your whole family is invested in avoiding consequences. There's a difference. He leaned back in his chair. I had a similar situation with my nephew. Different circumstances, but the same core issue. He borrowed money, squandered it, expected me to forgive and forget. I didn't. Took me to court, actually. What happened? I won. He paid me back over time. And you know what? 10 years later, he thanked me. Said I was the only person who ever held him accountable, and it changed his life. Derek won't thank me. Maybe not. But you're not doing this for gratitude, are you? I wasn't. I was doing it for principle. For the lesson that needs teaching even when no one wants to learn it. Morris Greenbaum joined us, setting down his coffee. Morris was 81, sharp as ever, a retired judge who still did mediations for the county. Whose funeral are we planning? He asked, reading the mood. Ed explained quickly. Morris listened, then snorted. Sue him. Sue him twice if you can. I saw this constantly on the bench. Families enabling bad behavior until the behavior destroys everything. You're drawing a line. Good. His parents think I'm being cruel. His parents failed to teach him about consequences. Now the courts will. Morris moved my pawn forward for me. I had been too distracted to play. Frank, you know what the hardest part of being a judge was? Watching good people feel guilty for enforcing boundaries. Don't you dare feel guilty. We played 3 games. I lost all 3, too distracted to focus. But I left the community center feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Supported. Understood. Not alone. That evening Linda called again. This time I answered. Dad, Derek is willing to go to $30,000. Please, he's trying. Trying to avoid full accountability isn't trying. It's bargaining. You're going to lose all of us over this. Linda, I already lost you. The moment you chose to defend his lie over supporting my truth, I'm just accepting reality. She hung up. I sat in Margaret's chair and felt, for the first time, a cold calm settle over me. Let them retreat. Let them regroup. I wasn't going anywhere. 2 weeks passed in relative silence. The lawsuit moved forward with bureaucratic slowness. Document exchanges, scheduling hearings, legal procedures that seemed designed to drain patience. Bill called regularly with updates. Derek had hired an attorney, some young guy fresh out of law school willing to take on a hopeless case. They were filing a motion to dismiss, claiming the promissory note was signed under undue influence. Nonsense, Bill assured me, but it would delay things by another month. Then, on a Tuesday evening in late April, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole I saw Derek, but he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was Father Michael O'Brien from St. Catherine's, the church where Margaret's funeral had been held. My chest tightened. They were bringing in reinforcements. Religious reinforcements. I opened the door. "Grandpa," Derek said softly, humbly, looking down at his feet like a penitent sinner. I was hoping we could talk. I asked Father Mike to come with me because I wanted a neutral party here. Someone who could help us find reconciliation. Father Mike nodded warmly. Frank, I hope you don't mind me stopping by. Derek came to confession last week, very troubled by this situation. I thought perhaps I could help facilitate a conversation. Confession. Derek hadn't been to confession in 15 years. But I stepped aside and let them in because refusing a priest felt wrong, even if I knew it was manipulation. We sat in my living room. Derek chose the couch where he had first asked me for the money, probably deliberately. Father Mike sat in the chair across from me. His presence meant to make me feel like the bad guy in this story. Frank, Father Mike began, I understand there's been a disagreement over money between you and Derek. I know these situations can be painful for families. Derek's head snapped up, eyes glistening. Were those real tears or performance? Grandpa, I made a terrible mistake, a sin. I've been carrying this guilt every day. Father Mike has been helping me understand how I let greed and pride corrupt my judgment. Very enlightening. Does this newfound understanding come with a $50,000 check? Father Mike shifted uncomfortably. Frank, I'm not here to judge who's right or wrong about the money. I'm here because reconciliation is at the heart of Christian teaching. Forgiveness. Father, with respect, I'm not asking Derek for forgiveness. He's asking me to abandon accountability. Derek leaned forward, hands clasped in prayer position. Grandpa, I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm asking for a chance to make it right on terms that don't destroy me. The lawsuit is public. It's affecting my job applications, my credit, my entire future. Good. Maybe you'll think twice before committing fraud again. See? Derek's voice changed slightly, an edge appearing. This isn't about justice for you. It's about punishment, about revenge. There it was, the mask slipping. Derek, justice and punishment aren't mutually exclusive. You broke the law. You betrayed my trust. There should be consequences. Father Mike tried to intervene. Perhaps we could discuss a payment arrangement that satisfies both parties? Derek mentioned he could potentially, Father Mike? I said firmly but respectfully. I appreciate your concern for Derek's soul, but unless you're here to write me a check for $50,000, this conversation is over. Derek stood abruptly, the humble act vanishing completely. You know what? I tried. I came here, humbled myself, brought a priest, and you're still being a stubborn, vindictive old man. There it is, I said quietly. The real Derek. You want to know the real truth? His voice was rising, anger flooding his face. That money? I don't even have it anymore. The Porsche is leased, not bought. I spent the rest on rent, on living, on life. You're not getting $50,000 because it doesn't exist. So sue me. Take me to court. You'll win a judgment you can never collect. Father Mike stood, clearly uncomfortable. Derek, perhaps we should... No, let him hear it. You're going to die alone, Grandpa. Die alone in this house, surrounded by nothing but your precious principles. And when you do, I won't even come to your funeral. He stormed out. Father Mike paused at the door, looking back at me with something like pity. Frank, please consider... Thank you for coming, Father. After they left, I sat in the silence of my home and felt something cold move through my chest. Fear. Real fear. Not of dying alone. I had made peace with loneliness years ago, but fear that Derek was right, that I would win legally and lose practically. Then I thought of Margaret, of integrity, of what I would see in the mirror tomorrow. The fear crystallized into something harder. Determination. Pure, cold determination. The court date arrived on a humid morning in June. The county courthouse was a stern granite building downtown, all marble floors and echoing hallways that smelled like floor polish and old wood. Bill met me on the steps at 8:30, carrying his leather briefcase, looking every bit the seasoned attorney he was. You ready? He asked. I've been ready since March. We entered courtroom 4B on the second floor. It was smaller than I expected from watching television. Just a dozen benches for observers, the judge's elevated bench, tables for each party, and an American flag in the corner. Derek was already there with his attorney, a nervous-looking young man named Jason Chen, who kept shuffling papers. Derek wore a navy suit and a somber expression, playing the role of responsible young man one last time. Linda and Michael sat in the front row behind Derek. They didn't look at me when I entered. That was fine. Judge Patricia Walsh took the bench at 9 o'clock sharp. She was 50-something, grey hair pulled back, reading glasses perched on her nose, with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who had heard every excuse in the world. This is case number CV 2024-3847, Morrison versus Morrison. Are both parties present? We confirmed. Judge Walsh reviewed her notes briefly, then looked up. Mr. Chen, I've reviewed your motion to dismiss. The argument is that Mr. Frank Morrison exerted undue influence over your client when obtaining the promissory note. I'm denying that motion. The evidence shows a clear arm's-length transaction between adults, drafted by counsel, signed voluntarily. We're proceeding to the merits. Mr. Harrison, you may present your case. Bill stood, and for the next 30 minutes he systematically destroyed Derek's defense. He entered the promissory note as Exhibit A. He presented my bank records showing the $50,000 transfer on March 15th as Exhibit B. Then came Exhibit C, the Porsche purchase receipt from March 18th, showing a cash payment of $48,500. Your Honor? Bill said, the timeline is incontrovertible. 3 days after receiving money ostensibly for a business investment, Mr. Derek Morrison purchased a luxury vehicle. He made no business investments, he formed no partnerships, he purchased no properties. He then played the video deposition from the car salesman, who confirmed Derek's statement about coming into money and wanting to celebrate. The testimony was devastating. Derek shifted uncomfortably at his table. Finally, Your Honor, I'd like to enter Exhibit F, text messages between Mr. Derek Morrison and his friend Tyler Brennan discussing the loan. Bill projected them on the screen. Derek, Grandpa's giving me $50K lol. Tyler, for what? Derek, some fake business thing. I'm getting that Porsche, bro. Tyler, you're insane. Derek, old man's loaded and naive, easy money. The courtroom went silent. I watched Derek's face drain of color. Those texts, Bill's investigator had obtained them through discovery, hidden in cloud storage Derek thought was private. Judge Walsh removed her glasses. Mr. Morrison, did you write these messages? Jason Chen whispered frantically to Derek. Finally, Derek stood, his voice barely audible. Your Honor, those texts were... I was joking with a friend, exaggerating. I did intend to start a business, but you purchased a Porsche 3 days later. The business opportunity fell through, and I made an impulsive decision. An impulsive $48,000 decision? Judge Walsh's voice was sharp. Mr. Morrison, these text messages indicate premeditated fraud. You referred to your grandfather as naive and called his money easy. That's not impulse. That's calculation. Derek's composure shattered. He has plenty of money. He doesn't need it. I'm 28 years old trying to build a life, and he's sitting on hundreds of thousands in retirement accounts. Mr. Morrison. Jason Chen grabbed his arm, but Derek shook him off. I'm his grandson, his only grandson who ever spent time with him. I deserve that money more than his stupid savings account. Judge Walsh's gavel cracked like thunder. Mr. Morrison, sit down, now. But Derek was beyond control. This is bullshit. He gave me that money. Gave it. You can't give someone money and then sue them for it just because you didn't like how they spent it. Sit down. Derek finally collapsed into his chair, chest heaving. Jason Chen looked like he wanted to disappear. In the gallery, Linda was crying silently. Michael's face was stone. Judge Walsh stared at Derek for a long moment, then looked at her notes. I'm ready to rule. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Walsh set down her pen and looked directly at Derek. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of finality. I've been on the bench for 19 years. In that time, I've seen many contract disputes, many family conflicts, many cases where money strained relationships. This is not one of those ambiguous situations where both parties share blame. She picked up the promissory note. This document is clear, properly executed, and legally binding. Mr. Derek Morrison borrowed $50,000 from his grandfather under explicit terms. The money would be used for a business investment to be repaid within 6 months with 10% interest. Derek stared at the table. Jason Chen scribbled notes uselessly. The evidence presented today demonstrates beyond any reasonable doubt that Mr. Derek Morrison never intended to use that money for business purposes. The text messages alone, referring to his grandfather as naive, calling the loan easy money, admitting he planned to purchase a luxury vehicle, constitute clear proof of fraud. Fraud in the inducement, specifically. Judge Walsh's voice hardened. What makes this case particularly egregious is the exploitation of a familial relationship. Mr. Frank Morrison trusted his grandson. That trust was weaponized against him. Mr. Derek Morrison calculated that his grandfather's love would prevent legal consequences. He was wrong. She flipped to another page. I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. Mr. Derek Morrison is hereby ordered to pay Mr. Frank Morrison the following: $50,000 in principal plus $5,000 in agreed contractual interest, plus $12,800 in legal fees, plus $15,000 in punitive damages for fraud. I did the math quickly. $82,800. More than I'd lent him. Significantly more. The punitive damages, Judge Walsh continued, are specifically intended to punish deliberate wrongdoing and deter future similar conduct. Mr. Morrison's text messages demonstrate premeditation and contempt for the victim. Such behavior warrants punishment beyond mere reimbursement. Derek's attorney stood weakly. Your Honor, my client doesn't have resources to... Then your client should have considered that before committing fraud. Payment is due in full within 90 days. If Mr. Derek Morrison cannot pay, we'll proceed with asset seizure. I'm authorizing garnishment of wages, seizure of the vehicle purchased with the fraudulent funds, and liens against any property your client owns or acquires in the future. The Porsche, I thought. They're taking the Porsche. Judge Walsh wasn't finished. Additionally, I'm ordering this judgment be reported to all 3 credit bureaus. Mr. Derek Morrison's credit will reflect this fraud judgment for the next 7 years. I'm also forwarding copies of the case file to the District Attorney's Office for review of potential criminal charges. Criminal charges. Bill had mentioned it as a possibility, but I hadn't expected the judge to initiate it. Your Honor. Derek stood, his voice breaking. Please, I can't. A criminal record would destroy my career. You should have contemplated career consequences before committing fraud. The district attorney will determine if criminal charges are warranted. That's not my jurisdiction. She looked at him coldly. Mr. Morrison, you are young enough to recover from this, but only if you learn the fundamental lesson you've apparently missed. Actions have consequences. Exploiting family doesn't make you clever. It makes you a thief with better access. She struck her gavel. Judgment for the plaintiff. 90 days to pay in full. We're adjourned. The courtroom erupted in motion. Derek slumped in his chair, face in his hands. Jason Chen packed his briefcase with the air of someone fleeing a disaster. Linda rushed to Derek, wrapping her arms around him while Michael stood frozen, staring at me with something between anger and disbelief. Bill shook my hand firmly. Complete victory, Frank. She gave us everything. I nodded. But victory felt strangely hollow in that moment. Not because I regretted my actions, I didn't, but because winning meant watching my grandson crumble, watching my daughter cry, watching my family fracture beyond repair. Then Derek looked up at me. His eyes weren't sad. They were full of hate. Pure, undiluted hatred. I hope you're happy, old man, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. I hope it was worth it. It was, I replied quietly, because integrity isn't negotiable. As we left the courthouse, stepping into bright June sunshine, Bill outlined next steps. The sheriff would seize the Porsche within 30 days. Wage garnishment would begin immediately. Derek's employer would be notified. If he quit his job to avoid garnishment, he'd be held in contempt. He's trapped, Bill said. No good options left. He trapped himself the moment he typed easy money to his friend. We stood on the courthouse steps, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness. This situation was too painful for happiness. But peace. The peace that comes from doing the right thing regardless of cost. The 90 days passed like a slow-motion reckoning. Within 2 weeks of the judgment, the sheriff seized Derek's Porsche. I wasn't there, but Linda called me crying, actually called me for the first time since the trial, to tell me how cruel and heartless I was for letting them take his car. His car. Bought with my money, obtained through my trust. Linda, I said calmly, the judge ordered it, not me. You could stop it. You could tell them you forgive the debt. I won't. She hung up. That was the last time we spoke. Through Bill, I learned the details of Derek's unraveling. The Porsche was auctioned, bringing in $41,000, less than he paid because luxury cars depreciate the moment they leave the lot. That amount was credited to his debt. He still owed $41,800. His employer, a mid-sized marketing firm, was served with the garnishment order. They began deducting 25% of his paycheck every 2 weeks. Derek apparently tried to quit, but Bill had anticipated that move. The judge issued a contempt order, warning that job hopping to avoid payment would result in jail time. Derek moved out of his apartment, couldn't afford the rent with his reduced income, and moved back in with Linda and Tom. At 38 years old, my daughter was supporting her adult son again, enabling him one more time. Tom, I heard through mutual friends, was not happy about the arrangement. Michael stopped speaking to me entirely. My son, my firstborn, sent me a terse email. Dad, I can't have a relationship with you while you're destroying my nephew's life. When you're ready to be reasonable, let me know. I deleted it without responding. The district attorney's office reviewed the case for 2 months before declining to prosecute criminally. They cited limited resources and the civil judgment as sufficient punishment. Derek avoided prison, but the fraud judgment on his credit record was punishment enough. He couldn't get approved for an apartment lease, couldn't finance a car, couldn't even open a new credit card. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened in my life. I found purpose. Ed Patterson introduced me to a volunteer program at the community college, retired professionals mentoring young business students. "You have wisdom to share, Frank," he said. "Don't let Derek's failure make you think young people aren't worth investing in." I was skeptical at first, but I met my first mentee in August. Her name was Jasmine Rodriguez, 20 years old, first-generation college student, working 2 jobs while studying accounting. She reminded me of myself at that age, hungry, honorable, eager to learn. Over coffee every Tuesday afternoon, I taught her what I knew about finances, about contracts, about the importance of integrity in business. I never told her about Derek. I didn't need to. She understood inherently what Derek never had. That trust is currency more valuable than money. By October, I was mentoring 3 students. By December, the college asked me to teach a 6-week evening seminar on ethics in business. Me, teaching at 70 years old. Margaret would have loved it. I also reconnected with old colleagues from my engineering days. We started a monthly dinner group, 6 retired engineers telling war stories and solving the world's problems over pasta and wine. I had been so focused on family drama that I had forgotten I had a life beyond it. The holidays arrived. No invitation to Thanksgiving at Linda's, no Christmas gathering at Michael's. I spent Thanksgiving with Ed and his daughter's family, and Christmas with the dinner group at Morris's house. Different traditions, different faces, but genuine warmth. These people chose to include me because they valued me, not because DNA obligated them. In January, Derek's final garnishment payment cleared. He had paid every penny of the $82,800 over 11 months. The case was closed. My bank account was whole again, plus the punitive damages. Bill called. "I know. Any regrets?" I thought of none, I said honestly. Not one. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Derek was still living with Linda and Tom. His credit was destroyed. His career had stalled. The fraud judgment came up in background checks. He had a new girlfriend who apparently didn't know about his past. I wondered how long that would last once she discovered who he really was. Linda and Michael were apparently arguing more. Money stress, someone said. Derek's presence in their home was straining their marriage. The consequences rippled outward, touching everyone who had chosen his lie over my truth. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering, but I felt no guilt either. So there you have it. My grandson stole from me. I sued him, I won, my family disintegrated, but my principles survived intact. Now I'll ask you, what would you have done? Would you have forgiven and forgotten? Would you have sued? Would you have handled it differently? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, subscribe to my channel. I have other tales of justice, betrayal, and the high cost of doing what's right. Thank you for listening to an old man's story. Sometimes family isn't blood. Sometimes it's the people who respect your boundaries.